Over the years, the Dragon Ball franchise has released a plethora of games, but in all my decades of being a DBZ fan, few have been quite as impactful as the Legacy of Goku series. Granted, this is partly due to my overall love for the series, but even as a non-DBZ fan, you'd still have to admit there's something really special about this trilogy. Now, for most, it goes without saying that the second entry in the series is typically regarded as the best of the bunch. But upon my replay, there was another that blew my expectations out of the water, and that game was Boo's Fury. Now I have to admit I've always been a bit perplexed by this entry, because the decision to drop the Legacy of Goku name, well, it's never made any sense to me. And I can still vaguely recall picking this game up as a kid, not knowing if it was the trequel I had longed for or another Taiketsu that would let me down. But upon picking it up, at least as far as I can remember, this game was extremely fun and improved upon just about every feature the previous entry implemented. Don't get me wrong, that's still not to say this game is perfect or even the best in the trilogy. In fact, amidst the glamorization of its predecessor, Boo's Fury received mixed reviews by critics, leaving many fans, such as myself, in utter shock at this reception. I mean, to be fair, I've always considered LOG2 to be superior, but only by a very small margin. So that begs the age-old question, where exactly did this entry go wrong? Or did it even go wrong at all? To most accurately determine if these mixed reviews were justified, I didn't just replay the game. I completed every quest possible, and in this review, we'll discuss if Boo's Fury is deserving of its mixed reception, where this game shines, and of course, everything else you need to know. Now, you could probably guess, before beginning my playthrough, I was under the impression that although odds are I probably will really like this game, Legacy of Goku 2 will always have that slight advantage over Boo's Fury. That being said, while in my eyes, the Cell arc is vastly superior to Boo's, there were still points where I questioned to myself if I actually might like this more than its prequel. The first thing I undeniably enjoyed more was the format of the storytelling, which thoroughly covers the events immediately following Cell's defeat throughout the end of the series, breaks the game up into 12 separate chapters, which I found to be a great way to organize the flow of the story, especially considering how divided our 5 playable characters are throughout many segments in this lengthy arc. This 5-man team is composed of returning characters like Goku, Vegeta, and an actual teen version of Gohan, but also welcomes in the new kids in the block, Trunks and Goten, whom sadly the Green Giant was swapped out for, leaving us with quite literally a Super Saiyan bargain sale. This did initially bother me because I love Piccolo, man. He's so underrated as a character. But if we're being real, he doesn't get much shine in this arc, and I've failed to see a chapter which he could be utilized efficiently. Each of these chapters will, for the most part, cover a segment of the post-Cell storyline. Sometimes these will allow you to alternate characters freely, like in Chapter 4, which is one of the standout chapters for me, particularly the ship area. This segment is highly reminiscent of the Dr. Gero chase stage in the previous game, where you had to destroy 3 generators to progress. The exact same rules apply here, except instead of generators, you have light switches. Every floor will have these. It will become progressively more difficult to locate as you advance. This especially reigns true in the 3rd stage, where you have to do a bit of backtracking in order to locate the missing parts for the switches. But then you have to turn on the switches as well. All in all, although this is lengthy, it's nothing too difficult, and I always enjoyed the sort of maze-like feel to this area. I also found this a great time to use one character per each of these floors and grind them up some levels to prepare for what's to come next. Although, spoiler, I might have grinded them a bit too much. This part always intrigued me because of the stage aspect itself. As a kid, it reminded me of a video game, and deep down, I wish we had like 9 stages or something. Deborah, why'd you have to ruin everything for us? Moving on, in contrast, there's also a handful of chapters that offer a bit less in the way of character choices. Like the first, which sees you take control of Goku in Otherworld. While this chapter is absurdly easy, it's still one of the very few times that we get to play through Goku's experiences in the other world, and serves as a solid intro / tutorial for the game. and you'll surely want to take notes of these tutorials because a lot more has changed aside from just the chapters. Like the combat, which while largely sticking to what made LOG2 great, brings in a couple of enhancements, the most notable being guard, which feels way more smooth and natural in comparison to just running out of the way of incoming attacks. Speaking of attacks, the most notable change here is in the super attacks or special moves, which I have to admit are very impressive. You of course get returning classics like Kamehameha, Big Bang Attack, and Masenko, but we also add some brand new additions to the mix, like Vegeta's Final Flash, or my personal favorite, Goku's Instant Transmission, which doubles as an attack and a means of accessing harder to reach areas. Each of these have little animations for them as well, which for a Game Boy title is pretty damn sick, especially Final Flash and transformations. We not only get Super Saiyan and briefly Super Saiyan 2, but the ability to go even further beyond as Super Saiyan 3. This transformation massively increases your strength and speed. And most importantly, Super Saiyan 3 just looks badass as hell. You're just wrong if you think otherwise. These new forms will now utilize their own golden energy bar, which takes the place of the base green one. So in a nutshell, Super Saiyan will last way longer in this game, but only if you're not using energy attacks or Super Saiyan 3. Lastly, as you level up, you will unlock stronger versions of your specials, the highest of these becoming available around level 150 or so, which a level that high is easier to obtain than it sounds. So easy in fact that it directly correlates with one of the most commonplace reasons this game is ranked lower than its predecessor. The fact the game is just too easy. I mean, think about it. How do we go from Goku getting one hit by a damn dog to legit beating major bosses like Super Boo in mere seconds? This flaw stems from a couple different core issues. First of which is in regard to a new addition to the game. Stat points. Each level up will grant you 3 stat points, which you are free to designate to your character's strength, power, or endurance. And at first glance, this is a great thing. I mean, having more customization is always good and allows each fighter to feel somewhat unique. I mostly made Goku my strength guy, Gohan power, and Vegeta, he was my endurance guy. Because, you know, my boys endured a lot of shit. But the problem begins once you realize you can make characters insanely OP very early in the game. Granted, enemies will still hit pretty hard, but even Vegeta, who was my endurance guy, was easily able to overpower any enemy I came across. Not only that, but the grinding is insane because there are so many levels. I mean, how do we go from a 25 level cap to a 50 to a 200? This may sound like it might add more post-game replayability, but in reality, it takes even less time to go from level 50 to 200 than it did to go from level 25 to 50 in the previous game. This is because you level up so freaking often that it not only gets frustrating because every 10 seconds you have to stop and do your little level up dance, but on top of that, you're expected to pause and designate stat points every 15 seconds. And this became such a frequent occurrence that there came a point where I had 50 points racked up. But what really made this game a walk in the park was when I began to utilize equipment, which changes the game in a multitude of ways, because it not only allows you to customize your characters even further, but also increase your stats in an alternative way, including sneakers for increased speed, iron armor for defense, different colored karate belts which follow a standard karate hierarchy, and even weighted armbands and boots, which typically lower your stats, but make leveling up even faster, which I know I just got done shitting on, but this can be great here, because in certain areas, you will need to do a lot of grinding. While the previous game had a handful of level gates required for story progression, they were mostly utilized for side content and post-game grinding. However, I'd be curious to see a speedrun of this game in particular, because nearly every plot point will require you to stop in your boots and level up. And at points, like the fight with Super Boo, you will need to grind Gohan up nearly 40 levels, and then immediately following, grind Goku the exact same amount. Although constantly grinding becomes extremely tedious, level ups again are so frequent that it barely caused an issue. I kid you not, there were times where I died, lost 10 levels, and then grinded them back in a span of 4 minutes. That being said, while dying barely put a dent in my playtime. You'd naturally want to avoid this by using heal items. This game includes a plethora of different recovery items, including foods like chicken and turkey for health recovery, hand drinks like Herculade for energy, which will allow you to use more supers and maintain transformations for longer periods of time. While enemies will frequently drop these items, you will also acquire Zenny the same way, which can be used at newly introduced Z-Marts to purchase a handful of useful items. It's safe to say my opinion of the inventory structure here is pretty mixed. On one hand, I do like the new addition as it adds just a touch of complexity, but I also can't help but miss the ease of automatically regaining health just by walking over a chicken leg or something. It just feels more fluid that way. But thankfully, the level structure and the difficulty of the game are the only two negative aspects that I personally found in my playthrough. Because, at least in my opinion, the remaining new features absolutely enhance the overall gameplay. One of my favorite new additions to the previous game makes its stunning return with a variety of new features: the world map. Firstly, introducing the ability to fly upwards or downward, which is the new way to enter one of these POIs, as opposed to hovering over it and pressing the A button. Unless being utilized in a main mission, the POIs will no longer be marked on your map. Instead, you'll have to rely strictly on your memory to locate them. This can be especially challenging in post-game content or in the search for the Dragon Balls, where although you have the Dragon Radar to help you, it still proves to be quite the pain in the ass to find them all. Although that aside, I do absolutely love this part of the campaign. Here we follow the two short Super Saiyans as they visit several unique places, including a hideout for thieves where you have to skillfully disguise yourself to enter, a mummy tomb, a freaking hijacked train in the desert, a massive, and I mean massive, airship that to me is one of the most unique and fun to explore places in the entire game, and even more to boot. Personally, I absolutely love this chapter, as it's where you're introduced to most of the non-Majin Buu centric POIs. And damn, they really outdid themselves with the pure scale, size, and uniqueness of these. Especially the train and the airship, dude. They are so freaking cool. But what's even cooler, and no, not him, is the 7th Dragon Ball ties in Broly to the mix. Specifically the plotline from the Second Coming movie. Our terrifying Saiyan friend, who's on a bit too much trend, does prove to be one of the more difficult adversaries up through this point in the game. But once we give Carrot Mouth a little hot shower, we put him right to sleep. The only issue I had here is that this would be super hard to make sense of in regards to the timeline. In the movie, Goku's dead, and in this game, he's alive. Kind of. And Gohan's alive and well in the movie, but here, he's alive but on Supreme Kai's planet. It's confusing for sure. But although the Broly plot does fail to make any damn sense, what does tie in exceptionally well to the campaign is the Janemba plotline. Yeah, you heard me right. Two of the best movie characters tied into the same game. I love it. Similar to Cooler in the previous game, Janemba was foreshadowed very early on, at a point in the plot that could actually line up with the canon, tying this little story to just as Goku returns to Otherworld, but before he visits Gohan. The chapter itself is very well designed, featuring a host of HFIL locations, an instant transmission maze, which is so cool, and of course the Gogeta fusion to take on Janemba himself. Fusions, which massively increase your power and speed, require you to input several prompts in a timely manner. When done correctly, your two characters will merge for about 5 minutes or so, and become a force to be reckoned with. Not only is this super fun to utilize and makes beating up the major bad guys even easier, but while fused, both characters will still be leveling up, which saves you a lot of time. These fusions will occur 3 times in the campaign, with Gotenks, Gogeta, and Vegito, who is sadly only available during the Buhan fight, probably because they hadn't retconned Batara yet and it was still a permanent thing. However, this fight does lead us to what is probably the coolest stage in any Dragon Ball RPG, Inside Buu, which showcases Goku and Vegeta fighting against a host of bodily fluids, like their Asian Drix, clones of their friends, and another fight against Buu himself. All in all, I just thought this entire stage was really cool and super unique for a DBZ game. Upon escaping the bubblegum beast, this leads us into our final battle, Kid Buu. While I'll be honest, this is still quite easy, it's probably the second hardest boss fight in the game for me, right up there next to Gohan vs Boo-Tanks, which actually can be quite the pain in the ass. The fight itself though is epic as all hell, featuring Goku and Vegeta taking turns fighting the monstrosity, and Vegeta having to fend him off for an entire minute is a cool touch. Thankfully, I made him my endurance guy. Once beaten, you will evaporate our little gumwad and end the game with a nice oob cutscene. Sort of. The post-game here is in some ways a lot better than the previous entry. Firstly, as you return to POIs, enemies will now be more powerful and grant additional XP, making grinding for those higher levels a bit easier. But opposed to simply grinding to unlock the final character, the game promotes exploration by having you collect a large amount of Hercule exhibits for the Hercule Cafe. This guy's a narcissist. Some of these are super straightforward, like buying them in stores or using instant transmission to reach them. Some are fetch quests, like the Lighthouse guy, and some will have you putting in time, like revisiting the airship Mega XJ5, which is now the airship Mega XJ6. Catchy. Last but not least, Z-Fighter exhibits are, I suppose, the equivalent to the level 50 grind in the previous game, as they are for the most part only accessible post-game and require a high level to acquire. To quickly locate these, you can use your enhanced scouter to find any new areas undiscovered within a POI. Although on occasions, they will be much more simple than this, acquired by simply talking to a character post Buu's defeat, or in some cases, fishing for Korin. Oh yeah, you can fish now. Upon collecting all the Hercule and Z-Fighter exhibits, you'll unlock the final characters / fusion, Gogeta, who I used to absolutely grind Goku and Vegeta's levels up fast as hell to get the level 175 Goku gates. Now, I'm not entirely sure why this is the highest level gate in the game. I mean, nothing's here except this glitch where you get stuck. But if you fuse by the door, you glitch back through it, so shout out to Reddit, I guess. But before we do wrap this up, let's briefly discuss our overall opinion on the game, how it compares to LOG2, and well, which I enjoyed more. Dragon Ball Z Buu's Fury was an overall amazing experience. I had completely forgotten, or perhaps never took the time to analyze in the first place, how well made and full of charm the locations, characters, and the overall story is. Although overall the game was quite easy, and I do appreciate a challenge, the enhancements made upon this, while not comparable to the changes between Legacy of Goku 1 and Legacy of Goku 2, they are still very apparent and, well, really added to my overall experience. But if I had to rate the two, I'd probably give Legacy of Goku 2 a 9.5 and Buu's Fury a 9.4, but a solid 9.4. When it comes down to it, I just love both games for slightly different reasons, and it was a really tough decision. But of course, whether you're a Dragon Ball fan or not, you'll probably find something to love about this game, so I definitely recommend checking it out. You will not regret it. But that's it for today, guys. If you guys did enjoy this video, make sure to leave a like, comment below on what you'd like to see next, what you thought of the video, and subscribe. Thank you all for 1,000 subscribers. It means so much, and I'll see you guys very soon. Peace.